It has been a big week at our nation's capital as the dust finally settles for the midterm elections. We've also seen several key pieces of legislation move through Congress last week alone, covering topics ranging from marriage equality to vaccine mandates and labor disputes. So here to help us make sense of all the latest developments, we have James Curry. He is an associate professor and director of graduate studies in the Department of Political Science at the University of Utah. James, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So let's begin today with the Respect for Marriage Act passing in the House. A majority of Utah's congressional representatives are supporting that move to enshrine same-sex and interracial marriage into federal law, while Representative Owens voted yes in a test vote over the summer. Now he's opposing it. Where's the divide here for Utah representatives?
Well, I think the fact that you see 3 out of 4 support it, and including some of our senators too, reflects that we've seen public opinion shift towards support of same-sex marriages quite a bit over the past couple decades. And a majority of Republicans nationwide support same-sex marriage, but still something like 40 to 45% of them don't. And I think now you see that divide a little bit in our own congressional delegation, where you have 3 House members voting in support of this bill, but still one that doesn't. And that's sort of really reflective of not only the picture in Utah in terms of where Republican voters stand, but also where they stand nationally, which is more supportive, but not all the way there.
You talked about a shift in the Republican Party as far as supporting gay marriage. What do you think caused that shift over time?
You know, I think a lot of it is just cultural shifts, right? And you go back 20, 30 years, and it's not just Republicans who overwhelmingly are uncomfortable with gay marriage, but a lot of Democrats too. And it's just generational shifts, cultural shifts that have affected both parties. Because while there's a lot of differences between our parties, they still primarily represent a lot of the same kind of voters. And so even in your more heavily Republican districts, you still have a lot of voters who maybe 20, 30 years ago were uncomfortable with gay marriage and now far more comfortable with it. And you see that showing up with this somewhat strong bipartisan support.
So let's talk a little bit about the pandemic. The House also voted to roll back the COVID-19 vaccine mandate for military, and Governor Cox personally wrote a letter to support the measure back in August, but no word on if the president will sign it. But are we seeing a shift on COVID policy nationally at this point?
I think we are. I think we're seeing both parties recognize that on some policies they need to give a little in order to get back to something of a status quo. And this is one where the Republican Party in particular, and as well as aspects of the Pentagon, had been pushing for this for a while because they saw it as hurting recruitment. They saw it as going against the grain of what a lot of sort of rank and file military officers want. And so I think this is sort of a continued slow rollback of where we won't have the same kind of draconian COVID-19 policies that we did in the past. And this is one that I think is passing overwhelmingly in Congress and that the president is likely to sign.
Okay. And we also want to talk about the balance of power in the Senate. We're going to show a graph in a second showing what happened. Senate Democrats clinched the 51-49 majority with Senator Raphael Warnock defending his seat in Georgia. And this caps out a poor performance from Republicans nationally. What does this mean for the future of the chamber and the party, really?
I think for the chamber, this gives a little bit more control to the Democrats. I mean, you'd think one seat doesn't make that much of a difference, but really what it means is now Democrats can actually hold majorities on every single committee in the Senate, which will make it a little bit easier for them to move some of their priorities. But in terms of the bigger picture, this says something about the Republican Party's inability to capitalize on a really good political environment of a sluggish economy and a relatively unpopular president, which means that I think you'll see a lot of reflection from national Republicans about where they want to go in 2024 and how do they avoid making some of the missteps they did this time and try to win back the Senate and the presidency 2 years from now.
So why do you think the Republican Party was not able to capitalize specifically in the Senate during this time?
I think a lot of it had to do with former President Trump. On one hand, you saw in a lot of these key races, including in Georgia, where the former president hand-picked nominees who just didn't have the kind of widespread appeal necessary to win statewide races. We saw this in Georgia with Herschel Walker, but also in Pennsylvania and Arizona and other places. Also, Trump really reasserted himself into a midterm election in a way that's uncommon for an outgoing president, especially a president who lost re-election. Normally, parties capitalize on winning back seats in the midterm after they lose power, because that election becomes a referendum about the party in power, in this case about Biden and the Democrats. But with Trump publicly being on the campaign trail in 2022, reasserting himself very publicly into nominations races, he once again made it a choice about, do you like Biden and the Democrats, or do you like Donald Trump? And ultimately, Donald Trump has his base of support, but he's just really not that popular with a lot of Americans. And it sort of cleared the way for a lot of votes to go on the Democratic side that in a normal year might have gone to the Republicans.